Welcome back to Newsday. Political campaign funding is a critical aspect of democratic elections, enabling candidates to reach voters and present their platforms. However, the lack of transparency and regulation in Nigeria's campaign finance system has led to abuse, corruption, and undue influence. The Nigerian electoral system is plagued by opaque campaign financing, allowing wealthy individuals and organizations to exert undue influence over politicians. This has led to corruption, vote buying, and the promotion of personal interest over public good. The absence of robust regulations and enforcement mechanisms enables candidates to solicit and accept funds from questionable sources, undermining the integrity of the electoral process. Well, to address these challenges, we're now joined by legal practitioner Malachy Ugwumadu. Good afternoon and good to have you on Newsday.
Good afternoon, Temitope. Good afternoon, viewers. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, of course, I'm sure you've heard of the controversy surrounding the management of campaign funds, in some prominent political parties here in Nigeria. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it is not a new occurrence, although it introduces a very unfortunate chapter in the political experimentation in Nigeria. But I guess what has been slightly different is the monetization of politics in Nigeria. All over the world, there is a nexus between politics and money. In this sense, funding. But what has become unsettling in our own climes is that in the years past, it used to be that members contribute to the funding of the party. But today, the way it is structured is such that encourages money bags and persons with deep pockets to fund political parties, and by so doing, take total control of those parties. But please make no mistake about it. There is enough legislative framework regulating funding of political parties and even monitoring of political parties. In short, it extends up to the Companies and Allied Matters Act. In this respect, I'm referencing Section 43, which outrightly prohibits incorporated companies from making any form of donations to political parties or political purposes, and goes ahead to criminalize whoever does that or whoever votes in favor of that donation in the courts of any board meeting or statutory meeting. With respect to the Electoral Act, under the 2010 Electoral Act, you had it elaborately spelled out under Section 91, subsection 2 to 7. With respect to the last amendment of the Electoral Act, and I'm referencing the Electoral Act 2022, Section 88, subsection 2 to 7, makes the same elaborate provisioning. But what is strange and very disturbing is to say, whereas there are legislative frameworks, the laws of this country, as a matter of fact, encourages the level of corruption that we see in political party system in Nigeria. How do I mean? By subsection 2 of Section 88, as at today, what the law says in Nigeria is that a presidential candidate or anyone who is vying for the presidency of this country can spend as much as 5 billion naira. I'm sure that smacks of some disturbing concern. 5 billion naira. Now, under Section 91 of the Electoral Act 2010, it used to be just 1 billion naira. Even at 1 billion naira, ideologically, you could see that this whole thing had become monetized. With respect to governorship candidates, in 2010, which is just about 12 years ago, if my mathematics is correct, it used to be the maximum of what? 200 million. As of today, a governorship candidate is permitted, in short, by law, allowed to spend as much as 1 billion naira, 1 billion naira. And it cascades in that manner. Senators, House of Reps, Councillor, you see whooping amount of money. So, from the standpoint of the law, which is the regulatory framework, you could see that corruption is already introduced into the party system in this country. Now, the law makes provision for INEC to, supervise or monitor the funding of political parties. INEC is supposed to be reported to by political parties when there is contributions in excess of 50 million naira. Now, these are part of the controversies that we have. Whereas the KAMA says that political parties, companies cannot donate money. Electoral Act says that you cannot donate more than 50 million naira. So that contradiction is such that raises a lot of confusion even in the whole process. On the one hand, the Company Act is saying that a company cannot donate anything. On the other hand, the Electoral Act is saying they can donate. Once they donate, any amount is in excess of 1 million, you must report it to the Electoral Commission. But they cannot donate more than 50 million. So the same acts of the National Assembly are contradicting themselves and introducing huge monetary policies into political party system in this country. So I do not agree that there are no legal frameworks. There are enough legal frameworks. But to the extent that they also introduce huge monetary expenditure into the process and contradictory positions is what is becoming very unsettling. But I think that at the end of the day, what is clear is that elections, whether in Africa, whether in developing countries, or in developed countries or enlightened entities, it's usually about context. Context does not exclude funding, but funding in civilized climes has to do with what you call crowdfunding, where people voluntarily and in piecemeal contribute as much to demonstrate their commitment to the ideals of those different ideological parties, to demonstrate their convictions as regards the policies and programs of those political parties. And the way to own and be part and drive those processes is to make commitments either by way of donation in a way that doesn't obstruct anything. But here, you could see some of the political gladiators in recent times. Some say openly that they did not just own the party, they funded the party. In short, I have seen and heard the present minister of the Federal Capital Territory boast unabashedly, even as a lawyer, that there's no person who can challenge him because he funded the PDP, and that it is going to be extremely difficult for any of them to come out to challenge him. He took responsibility for sponsoring all the political candidates in PDP in the last election in that state. Up until this moment, no person has challenged him. In short, what he's doing at the moment is most anachronistic, most antithetical, and flies in the face of proper party politics in such a manner where no one can come out of PDP to engage this man. It tells you about party funding and the soul of a political party. A political party is supposed to be the center of engagement, where ideas are conceived, debated, synthesized, and turned out into policies for a government in power. But today, I'm afraid, that is not exactly what it means.
Now, Malachy, you talked about crowdfunding, and I know that there's a political party that one of its members had questioned what they did with the funds raised when they asked Nigerians, to donate at least 1,000 naira to a particular political candidate's ambition. So then I'm wondering, if there's any role that donors can play in ensuring that campaign funds are not diverted.
Of course there are. It is almost like asking whether we have a responsibility to monitor the budgetary process and budget disbursement in this country. Once you commit your fund to a project or an idea, it naturally activates your right to monitor the expenditure. In fact, even in law, that is what activates your right to also be able to challenge any transgressions around the spending of that particular money. So it's a given that donors can monitor. What the law says is that political parties shall create an account, open an account, into which monies, donations, and assets, monetary values of the assets of the political party shall be lodged. The purpose of that is to guarantee monitoring and effective, effective accountability. So my direct response to your question is that yes, whoever donates can monitor.
But then, I'm also wondering,
can ascertain the
for those that are monitoring, and that they've seen that there's an issue with how the campaign funds were managed, how then do they successfully challenge transgressions legally with the contradictory laws that you have pointed out?
No, the contradictory laws I pointed out is just to speak to the lack of cohesion and coherence and even coordination in managing the legislations relating to specific subject matters. I had drawn your attention to what KAMA says, which expressly prohibits outrightly any form of donation. Yet, in the Electoral Act, it says you cannot donate more than this. You can't in one breath say an entity cannot donate. And then in another legislation by the same National Assembly, Act of National Assembly, you say they cannot donate more than this. That's a contradiction, and it's on one side. The proper point to note is that members of a political party should also get themselves familiar with the law. What is the law? The Constitution, the Electoral Act, the rules guiding elections in Nigeria. I have gone ahead, because I have the privilege of being a lawyer, to also identify some other legislations, even if they are not directly related to elections. So, with respect to monitoring, what the law says is that you cannot take donations from anonymous persons. If donations are made in excess of 1 million naira, you must disclose it. That is the responsibility of disclosure on the part of the political parties. To who? To the election monitoring body, which is INEC. You cannot receive donations more than 50 million naira from any person or any entity. If you do, you'll be running foul of the Electoral Act, and it goes ahead to underscore how serious it is to criminalize such transgression and makes it punishable if you are found liable or upon conviction to imprisonment or payment of the equivalent of the money you refuse to donate. So, in clear terms, you can monitor. The whole essence of imposing on political parties the duty to create an account, the responsibility to report donations and disclose donations made, is to activate the powers of not just the election monitoring body, but those of the donors to be able to track donations made and ensure and guarantee transparency and accountability. And I think that is a way. The big elephant in the room is how practicable is this? To what extent can this be operationalized with a view to actually meeting the objective of the law, which is over monetization. You can imagine the words the figures I'm reeling out here. 5 billion naira.
So,
Malachy, this is the provenance of the corruption in this country. Yes.
So then, as we wrap up this interview, and of course, as we look forward to 2027, what sort of reforms would you recommend regarding the issue of campaign funding in Nigeria?
Well, first of all, is to understand that there is the need to return political parties to the citizens and, more importantly, to the electorate. How do you do that? We must find a way by which we return to the practices we have always had in this country, particularly in the first dispensation, First Republic, where people, the masses, the electorate, the members of political party, own political party. And that is where the whole idea about supremacy of political parties came from, such that it is an entity that is not owned by one single money bag. It is a forum for collective, inclusive participation of electorates to be part of the conception of ideas, the synthesis of those ideas, and the development of those ideas into possible policy framework that can drive a whole government, a full government, supposing the party comes to power. And you could see that the best way to deal with it is to guarantee that these people who believe so much in the ideas of those political parties is able to run those parties, is able to fund those parties, no matter how small the contributions they make, but done across board in such a way that the funding is limited to those people without hijacking the source of those political parties by other people. So what do I propose? First is to harmonize the laws. I find it very contradictory, very untidy, and antithetical that the legal regime, the legal frameworks are in themselves contradictory. And I've referenced the sections of both the Kama, Electoral Act, and the Constitution that is an issue. Secondly, we must deliberately and consciously come back to making party participation, party funding accessible and affordable by people with ideas and not just money back. When you say that a candidate can spend as much as 5 billion naira, what you are saying in a capitalist environment such as ours is that you could go ahead and acquire this money, in most cases, much more than the 5 billion mentioned, even if what that means in the true sense is that you spend the whole time in office trying to recoup that money. I find that very unsettling because it is at the heart of the corruption, not just in political parties, but in the administration of this country as a whole.
Legal practitioner.
And what is more? Sorry, my friend.
Please go ahead.
What is more? What is more? Finally, it is that under section, it used to be section 150 under the Electoral Act 2010, but now under section 145 of the Electoral Act 2022, INEC, the election monitoring body, is empowered, is given the latitude to prosecute electoral offenses. Part of those electoral offenses are the ones we are mentioning now. If you transgress them, you have offended the law, and you can be subject of prosecution. In short, so many years ago, I was appointed the MBA, Nigerian Bar Association, at the Akure NEC meeting, I remember, took a decision and wrote me a letter appointing me and so many other lawyers as lawyers who will assist them in prosecuting electoral offenses. That was because INEC as an institution complained that they were in short supply. They lacked the manpower to do those prosecution. And so MBA as a professional body offered pro bono to be able to collaborate with them. But that was the end of it. Nothing happened. No case was assigned. No. So today, the impunity you see is not just proportional, but a function of the failure of the actors and institutions in the process to activate the rights that they have, creatively find a way to empower themselves and resource themselves with a view to dealing with these cases which are provided for under the law. Those are the reforms that can occur.
Legal practitioner Malachy Ugwumadu, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.